My Move is actually my first single, if I'm being honest. When I started doing music, I actually started as an artist first. I actually didn't start as a producer. I actually started as an artist. Now, back then, I was part of a Christian hip hop group. And as part of that Christian hip hop group, there were four of us. We were all amazing. We were growing, and everything like that. But obviously, God had a different plan for each and every single one of us. So things panned out a little differently. But the actual name WesTheTech, that's where that name actually came from. That name actually came from my artist name when I was a part of that group. Now, long story short, what happened was after, the group disbanded, I kind of, went through a huge period of time. I think it was, I don't remember exactly how many years. I would say roughly about 6 to 8 years. So it was a long time that I just completely stopped doing music. I completely was done with music. I didn't want anything to do with music anymore because the way we stopped doing music, it was unexpected. It was like interrupted. Life happened. I don't want to get into the details, but it wasn't a planned ending. It ended abruptly, and I was pretty much in a place of almost hatred for music at that point because I was just so upset of how it ended. So from that point, I just stopped doing music. I even stopped listening to music, which I never did, but that's just how bad that moment in time affected me because I knew we were growing. I knew we were getting to a place, we were building a fan base and everything like that. And then all of a sudden it just stopped. So it hit me kind of hard, but over the years, and it's kind of crazy, not to get too churchy and everything, but when you have a purpose, the enemy will kind of do whatever he possibly can to stop you from living out that purpose, especially when it's destined by God and it's from God. Like you personally like some people, they live a purpose. Other people, they live a purpose that they know God made them for. When you're one of those people, the enemy tries extra hard because you know where your purpose came from. You know what I'm saying? So the enemy was working on me, man, to the point that, like I said, I stopped doing music. I stopped listening to music. That's how bad it was. But long story short, what ended up happening is I told myself, okay, if I'm going to get back into the music, I'm just going to get back as a producer. I'm just going to be a producer. So I kept that name, WesTheTech, but I was no longer an artist. I was a producer. So, I opened up a studio. I started recording with multiple artists, making beats, this, that, and the third. And I was really just strictly a producer, right? And then I just remember in prayer one time, it was a real deep conversation I had with God. And he was just like, you're an artist. I made you more than a producer. You're more than just a producer. And I made you to be more than just a producer. So I'm going to need you to start making music again as an artist. And of course, I was like resisting at first because number one, I was afraid, obviously, because I didn't want to fail again, even though the first time it wasn't due to my own terms solely, it was a group effort, so it was a little bit different. But I was afraid, and I was afraid to not fail again. And I also was afraid to start over. You know what I'm saying? Especially since I'm coming from a group. Now I'm about to just do music by myself. Like, I didn't have, as weird as this sounds, I had confidence in myself as a group, but I didn't have confidence in myself as a solo act. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I'm the blue Power Ranger and I see the other color rangers next to me, I'm good. I'm like, oh yeah, we're raw. We're ready. I have confidence in team efforts. But when it comes to like, it's all on my shoulders, it's just me, like I'm on the cover and everything like that, I didn't have the confidence in that. I'm just being honest, so it was one of those things. It was a growing experience. And I was just like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it the right way. So I prayed on it, and I fasted and all of those things. And I eventually came up with the idea that the easiest way for me to separate this and actually make sense of this is to just come up with a new name. Right. So I didn't want to erase WesTheTech and make it disappear because WesTheTech has a history within himself, and he is now a producer. And there's so much that WesTheTech was. So I didn't want to just erase WesTheTech and just have a new name. So I was like, I'm just going to create a new name as me as an artist. So that's where Connect came from. Now, I don't say this much, but where I actually got the name from, it's actually artistic way of writing it in almost of African style, because obviously African heritage. I mean, I'm Haitian by birth. My mom and dad are both Haitian, but we're all traced back to Africa in one way or the other, right? So I stylized it in an African way, but what it actually means is connect. Because I wanted to be the connection to the source, the connection to God. When you listen to my music, hopefully my music connects you to God, especially if you're a listener who don't know him yet, I hope that my music can make that connection to him, so that's essentially where that actually came from. So WesTheTech is going to be the producer, the businessman, all of this, and Connect is going to be the artist. So when it came down to making the song, I was like, okay, Connect has to release a single. Connect has to have a song. Connect doesn't have a song. WesTheTech has a song when he used to be an artist, but Connect doesn't have a song. And my move actually became that first song, which is why, when you're listening to it, it's time to make my move. And I'm saying all of these things in the sense of the entire album. You think of it in the context of the journey. It's time to make my move in the journey. But in actuality, when the song was written, it's time to make my move as an artist. It's time for Connect to come out and make his move and become an artist. You know what I'm saying? So that's where the ideal to my move came from. It came from an ideal first, and then it became a song, right? So now the cool thing about my move, it actually was the easiest song to produce. It's the most simplest track I have in the entire album. It literally took me 10 minutes to do, so long story short, what I ended up doing first and foremost was just having this simple piano loop that I found, right? Very, very simple piano loop, and it was a cool little loop. So once I heard it for the first time, I'm like, this is going to work perfectly. You know what I mean? Very simple, nothing too complex or anything like that. It's just simple, but it captured exactly what I wanted to capture in the first single. So once I had that, I was just like, I'm not going to make this complex. I'm not going to make this crazy. I'm just going to add some drums to it and maybe add something else if I wanted to. So playing with it, of course, me, I like to play with the beat machines and everything like that. So I started messing with the beat machines, and I came up with basically the kick first, which is this. No, actually, that's the hi-hats. I actually made the hi-hats first because this is the exact order I created it. So I don't typically do hi-hats first, but I don't know why I did this one in this way. It's very, very weird for me since I don't typically do that, but I did it for this track. So that's what came first, right? And then from that point, I then added the snare. Now, once I had the snare, it was pretty easy from that point. Once I had the snare, I was just like, all right, I have the snare, I have this sounds great. Let me just add a kick. And of course, me being the hip hop guy, me being the guy who loves hip hop, being from the South, even if I'm going to have a kick, I'm going to have a strong kick. Now, I wanted a boom pat feel to the song, like a 90s boom pat feel. So I just went with the drums the kick that they had in that same beat machine that I was messing around with, that I got the snare and the hi-hats from, and I ended up getting this. Now once that came together, I was like, oh my gosh, as simple as it is, it's good. I don't need nothing. Like, it sounded great. I felt like, I don't need to make anything any more complex than it is, but as I was listening to it, obviously before I start writing or in the process of writing, you listen to the beat a bunch of times, And it got to a point that I was sitting there, I was like, you know what? It needed something more. It wasn't quite complete. You know what I'm saying? Like I felt like I needed something more to it. I still wanted it simple. The purpose of it was to be simple and not to be too complex, but I wanted something more to it. So I started messing around, and then I came across, I was like, maybe let me add some strings to it. Let me add some guitar. I don't have a guitar. Let me add some guitars. I put the guitars, but the guitars quite wasn't hitting it. I mean, I tried a bunch of different guitars. And I was like, I hear strings in my head, but the guitar just wasn't hitting it right. So I was like, you know what? Let me hit some orchestra strings. Let me go to harps and violins and things like that. So I ended up landing on violins, actually, and I ended up getting this sound right here. And I thought it was dope. I thought it fit perfectly, and this is what I got. And then I was like, you know what? Let me just add another layer to it, like a higher layer to it, and see how it sounded. And it was the same thing. I just added a higher layer to it, and I got this. Right? And I was like, man, that sounds cool. So I'm going to ride with that. So what I ended up doing is, of course, I took the strings, and I put it with everything else. I brought my drums back in, brought the piano back in, and then I ended up getting this sound right here, which we all know today as... So once I had that, I was just like, man, that came together better than hoped, So from that point, it was just a matter of writing to it, So of course, now, fun fact when it comes to the verses, both of the first verse. So the first verse I actually already had written for another song as WesTheTech that I had years ago that I never got a chance to use because the group disbanded, right? So I was like, man, I love this verse so much and I don't want it to go to waste. So let me just try it on this beat. You know what I'm saying? And, I was nervous at first because I was like, I don't know if it's going to fit. But then, I just hit the first couple of lines, you know what I'm saying? The anger that I got in my heart, you know what I'm saying? And I recorded it on the beat and I was like, oh my gosh, it's a perfect fit. So then from that point, it was just a matter of just writing the hook and writing a second verse to it, right? And that's the fun thing about music is you never know how the song is going to come together. So a lot of times there's no set plan to how the song comes together. It just comes together the way it comes together, And it's just such a beautiful thing. Like hindsight, looking back at it was like, oh yeah, this is how this song happened. But yeah, for this one, the first verse, it was a verse that I had that I never got a chance to use as WesTheTech part of that group, but it was repurposed for the purpose of my first single as Connect. And then from that point, I literally just wrote a second verse to it. And I had my second verse and I had my song. Now, when it came to the hook, I wanted the hook to capture the fact that I was starting, I was going to make my move as a new artist. Connect was finally making his move. Connect is here, and now Connect is about to make some music, right? So that's where the concept of my move came from. I gotta make my move, I ain't got time to lose. That whole part of it was just like, look, I've already spent so much time in doubt and fear of even making music in the first place. Now I don't have no time. So now I gotta punch through. I got to get this done. I got to make this music because I ain't got no time to lose. I wasted 6 years of my life not even listening to music and everything like that and not living out my purpose. So now I got to come even harder, faster, and move stronger, everything like that. So when the hook came to my mind, the written part of the hook came easy because it's exactly how I felt at the moment. So once I went ahead and I wrote that down and everything, I went to go record it, and that's where my move came when it came to the hook, you know what I mean? Now, after the hook was laid down and everything was laid down, and everything was good. I was like, it's time to release this track. It's time to release this track. That was another big hurdle for me to actually release this single, because again, it was the first single that I was releasing as Connect. Now, mind you, when I decided to release this single, I had no album in mind. The journey wasn't even a thought. The journey wasn't anything. There was no ideal of actually making an album. I was just getting over the hump of being an artist again. You know what I mean? So all I was trying to do was release a single. So when my move was released and I released it as a single and it was out, never in my mind did I think that it was going to end up being part of an album, or never in my mind did I think I was going to even make an album, to be honest. So it's interesting how it ended up being part of the album and actually making sense as the album, because when you listen to it, when it comes right after, the intro, you think I'm saying, it's time to make my move as far as the journey, but that wasn't the purpose of the song. That wasn't why the song was initially made, and it's just, I just love that about music, that the intentions of making a song isn't always what it ends up being. That's just the beautiful thing about making music. And that's just the beautiful thing about, living in purpose. Like I said, when you're living in God's purpose, everything ends up working out. You know what I'm saying? So listening to it, you're probably thinking, oh, he probably made that specifically for the album, but it was made long before the album was even a thought or an ideal. So that's the fun part about my move. That's the cool and interesting thing about my move. So yeah, my move is the first song that was recorded as far as chronologically, you know what I'm saying? But it ended up being a perfect fit for the album, which is why I ended up making it the second track. Because before I talk about anything else after the intro, I'm letting you know that it's time to make my move. I got to make my move, and these are the reasons that I got to make my move. So my move was an absolute fun track, even though, obviously the production was very, very simple and everything like that. It all came together and it made one heck of a track. Thank God.
The anger that I got in my heart, there ain't no taming it. You claiming that you're real, but you're not. I had enough of it. I wish you paid attention in class. Got no intelligence, got nothing left to give you but laughs and my condolences. Killing your career and trust, they won't be witnesses. You haven't earned your spot, so I'm about to drop predictions. My mission is to end all the hurt and the false religions while we're closing down the system in all the black prisons.